Pretend your baby is mine, whispered the Korean Mafia boss to the rejected black woman no one wanted. The first thing they teach you is to hold your head high. Walk with dignity. Never let them see your tears. That's what my grandmother told me when I was 7. Watching her apply cocoa butter to her elbows at her vanity. The world is waiting for you to break, Zara Williams. Don't you give them the satisfaction. I remembered those words as I stared at the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines mocking me in the fluorescent light of the pharmaceutical company's bathroom. 2 pink lines that shouldn't exist. 2 pink lines that would change everything. I don't remember him. That's the part that burns the most. Just fragments. Expensive cologne, gentle hands, a deep voice murmuring something I couldn't quite catch. Then nothing. Just waking up alone in my hotel room, my head pounding, my memory a series of black holes where the previous night should have been. The industry gala was supposed to be my moment of triumph. I'd just completed the research that could revolutionize cancer treatment. Instead, it became the night someone slipped something into my champagne, the night that would eventually cost me everything. 6 weeks later, those 2 pink lines. 8 weeks later, the whispers started at work. 12 weeks, and the research grant I'd been promised was reassigned. We need someone with fewer distractions, Dr. Heller said, not even bothering to look me in the eyes. The unspoken truth hung between us. They needed someone who wasn't a pregnant black woman without a ring on her finger. My family wasn't much better. How could you be so careless? My mother asked, disappointment dripping from every syllable, as if I'd chosen this. As if I remembered anything about that night beyond accepting a glass of champagne from Vanessa, my colleague with the too bright smile who'd always resented my success. I didn't tell them about the missing hours, about waking up with my dress still perfectly in place but something fundamentally changed. They wouldn't have believed me anyway. Black women aren't afforded the luxury of being victims. We're just irresponsible, promiscuous, should have known better. By my 5th month, I was toxic. The brilliant Dr. Zara Williams, with her Stanford degree and groundbreaking research, reduced to a cautionary tale. The department head stopped inviting me to meetings. My research was redistributed. My name removed from papers I'd spent years working on. We're downsizing, they said when they finally fired me. On the same day, my landlord slid an eviction notice under my door. I stood in the middle of my apartment, the one I'd been so proud to lease in a neighborhood where people like me weren't typically welcome, and screamed until my voice gave out. 18 years of perfect grades. 7 years of advanced research. All of it scattered like ashes because one night, one drink, one missing memory changed the narrative of who I was supposed to be. The baby kicked inside me as if in response. A flutter of movement, a reminder that despite everything, life continued. I pressed my palm against the swell of my stomach. It's just you and me now, I whispered. The anger that had been building for months crystallized into something harder, something that felt like resolve. We don't need anyone else. I was wrong about that, so terribly, humiliatingly wrong. The Solwa pharmaceutical headquarters gleamed like a diamond in the morning sun. 52 stories of glass and steel, the name emblazoned in both Korean and English, a testament to the company's global ambitions. I clutched my portfolio tighter as I approached. This was my last shot. My bank account was nearly empty. My credentials were still impeccable on paper, if you ignored the unexplained 6-month gap in my employment history. And Solwa was rumored to care more about results than appearances. I didn't expect to make it past the lobby. The security guard eyed my pregnant belly with suspicion. The receptionist's smile never reached her eyes as she made a call, speaking rapid-fire Korean into the receiver. I caught the doubt in her voice, even without understanding the words. Then he appeared. Park Jin-ho. I recognized him from the business magazines, the young, enigmatic CEO of Solwa's American operations. What the magazines didn't capture was his presence. The way the air seemed to change when he entered a room. The absolute stillness in his dark eyes. Those eyes assessed me now, taking in my second-hand maternity dress, my defiant posture, the portfolio I refused to stop clutching even as my fingers cramped. Dr. Williams, he said. His English perfect but tinged with the musicality of his native Korean. I've been following your research for some time. The interview wasn't what I expected. He asked questions about my work, detailed, probing questions that revealed he'd actually read my papers. Not once did his gaze linger on my stomach. Not once did he ask about family obligations or scheduling conflicts. For 2 hours, I was just a scientist again. Not a scandal. Not a statistic. Until Vanessa walked into the conference room. The same Vanessa who'd handed me that champagne. The same Vanessa who'd spread rumors about me sleeping my way into research grants. The same Vanessa who now worked for Solwa, apparently, and whose face drained of color when she saw me. "You can't seriously be considering her," she said to Jinho, as if I wasn't sitting right there. "She's unreliable, unprofessional. She has twice your publication record and 3 times your citation impact," Jinho finished, his voice quiet but somehow filling the room. "And unlike you, Dr. Chun, she doesn't waste my time with personal vendettas." Vanessa's face flushed. "You don't understand. She got herself pregnant in the middle of the Anderson trial. I was drugged." The words burst from me like water through a broken dam. Months of silence, of shame, of swallowing my rage, and suddenly I couldn't hold it back anymore. At the gala, someone put something in my drink. I don't remember anything that happened that night. But I'm guessing you do, don't you, Vanessa? The silence that followed was absolute. Vanessa's face went from red to white. Jinho's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did, a flash of something I couldn't identify. "Ms. Chun, you're dismissed," he said. Not just from the room, I realized later, but from the company. After she left, he studied me with that unreadable gaze. "You never reported this." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Who would believe me? A black woman claiming she was drugged after being found in a hotel room? They'd say I was making excuses, that I regretted a decision. When was this gala? He interrupted. February 15th. The Anderson Pharmaceutical Awards. Something crossed his face then. So quickly I almost missed it. Recognition, shock, and something that looked almost like realization. "I was there," he said quietly. My heart stopped, started again, hammered against my ribs. "Did you?" "No." The denial was firm, absolute. "But I remember seeing you. You were wearing blue, navy blue, a dress I'd saved for months to buy, a dress I'd thrown away the morning after, unable to look at it without feeling sick. I need someone I can trust for a special project," he said, changing the subject so abruptly I felt dizzy. "Someone brilliant, someone with nothing to lose, someone who understands discretion." "I'm 6 months pregnant," I reminded him, as if the obvious needed stating. "Whatever you're looking for." "I'm looking for you, Dr. Williams." He leaned forward, his dark eyes intent on mine. "And I'm prepared to make it worth your while. Full health benefits, housing provided, a salary that reflects your actual worth." It sounded too good to be true, because it was. "There's one condition," he continued, "a personal matter that requires some flexibility on your part." I should have walked out then. Should have recognized the too familiar pattern of a powerful man thinking he could buy compliance along with expertise. But I was tired. So tired of fighting, of proving myself, of wondering how I'd feed the life growing inside me. "What kind of flexibility?" I asked, hating the weariness in my voice. Jinho Park studied me for a long moment. Then he said 6 words that would change everything. "Pretend your baby is mine," he whispered. "Insanity has a weight to it. A physical presence that settles on your chest and makes it hard to breathe." I felt it pressing down on me as Jinho explained his proposition in that sterile conference room. His voice never rising above that controlled, measured tone. He needed a family image, a ready-made one. His grandfather, the family patriarch, was dying, taking with him the last resistance to Jinho's plans to legitimize the family businesses completely. But there were cousins waiting in the wings, traditionalists who would use Jinho's bachelor status against him, who would claim he wasn't committed to the family's future. "A pregnant fiancée solves several problems at once," he said, as if discussing a business merger rather than my body, my child, my life. "It demonstrates my commitment to continuing the family line. It explains my focus on legitimate enterprises. It silences questions about succession. And what about the fact that I'm black?" I asked, the question burning my throat. Won't your traditional family have concerns about that? Something flashed in his eyes, anger, but not directed at me. My family left Korea to escape such limitations. Anyone who objects can follow my grandfather into retirement. He made it sound so simple. A business arrangement. A mutually beneficial solution. I pretend to be his fiancé until his position is secure. He provides financial stability, protection, a future for my child. No actual marriage necessary. No physical expectations. Just a charade for public consumption. And when you're ready to find a real wife, a real family? I asked, one hand resting protectively over my stomach. What happens to us then? You'll have a contract guaranteeing lifetime financial support. A trust fund for the child. Complete independence. He delivered these promises like facts, immutable and certain. You'll never need to worry about security again. I wanted to be outraged, to throw his offer back in his face with all the dignity my grandmother had taught me to maintain. But dignity doesn't pay medical bills. Pride doesn't provide a safe home for a child. And something in his eyes, something guarded and careful and maybe a little desperate, made me think he needed this arrangement as much as I did, though for very different reasons. Why me? I asked finally. There must be dozens of women who would jump at this chance. Women without the complication of another man's child. Jin-ho's expression remained impassive, but his fingers tensed slightly against the conference table. I have my reasons, he said. Not least of which is that you're intelligent enough to understand the arrangement and independent enough to honor its terms. There was more he wasn't saying. I was certain of it. But beggars can't be choosers, and I was definitely begging. I'll need everything in writing, I said, hating myself a little for the surrender. And I want veto power over anything involving my child. Our child, he corrected. At least for public purposes. But yes, I agree to your terms. He extended his hand across the table. I hesitated only a second before taking it. His skin cool and dry against my palm. A business transaction. Nothing more. I tried to ignore the jolt of electricity that shot up my arm at the contact. The strange sense of familiarity. The echo of something I couldn't quite remember. The Park family compound was like nothing I'd ever seen outside of movies. Nestled in the hills overlooking the Pacific, it sprawled across acres of perfectly manicured grounds. Traditional Korean architecture blended seamlessly with modern luxury. Pagoda-style roofs topping glass walls. Ancient stone gardens surrounding an infinity pool. This is where you live? I asked, unable to keep the awe from my voice as Jin-ho's driver navigated the winding driveway. One of several properties, he replied without a trace of ostentation. This is the family home. My grandfather insisted we all stay connected. Connected. What a sanitized way to describe what I was beginning to understand was a family dynasty. In the weeks since our arrangement began, I'd done my research on the Parks. The official story was impressive enough. Immigrants who built a pharmaceutical empire through hard work and strategic investments. The unofficial story, buried in whispers and redacted police reports, suggested something else entirely. Something that explained the security personnel positioned discreetly around the property. The bulletproof glass in Jin-ho's car. The careful way he surveyed every room before allowing me to enter. The Korean Mafia. That's what I'd agreed to align myself with. The knowledge should have terrified me. Instead, it brought a strange comfort. These were people who understood power. Who wouldn't be pushed around by corporations or landlords or social workers questioning a single mother's fitness. For the first time in months, I felt safe. Until I met his mother. Park Min-hee was a force of nature contained in a deceptively delicate package. Barely 5 feet tall, dressed in an impeccable Chanel suit, she greeted her son with formal affection before turning those razor-sharp eyes on me. She spoke in rapid-fire Korean to Jin-ho, never taking her gaze from my face. I didn't need a translation to understand the questions. The doubt. The assessment of my worth. Jin-ho responded calmly, one hand coming to rest at the small of my back. Possessive gesture. A statement. His mother switched to perfect, accented English. My son says you are a scientist. That you met at a pharmaceutical conference. Yes, I said, the lie already becoming familiar. I'm a research oncologist specializing in targeted therapies. And the baby's father? Mother, Jin-ho interrupted, his tone carrying a warning. She ignored him. I ask because family is everything to us, Dr. Williams. Bloodlines, legacy. These are not abstract concepts in this house. I met her gaze steadily. The baby's father is standing right beside me, I said, the words burning my tongue. As far as the world is concerned, as far as legacy is concerned, this child is a park. Isn't that right, Jin-ho? His hand pressed more firmly against my back. Exactly right. Something that might have been approval flickered across Minhee's face. Well, she said, at least you found a woman with spine. She turned, gesturing for us to follow. Come, your grandfather is waiting. As we walked, Jin-ho leaned close to my ear. You handled that perfectly, he murmured, his breath warm against my skin. I'm not afraid of difficult women, I replied. I was raised by one. I'm becoming one. For the first time since I'd met him, Jin-ho Park smiled, a real smile that transformed his face from handsome to breathtaking. Good, he said simply. You'll need to be. They say you can tell everything about a family by how they treat their most vulnerable members. If that's true, then the Parks were a study in contradictions. Park Sun-jae, the family patriarch, was dying of pancreatic cancer. His once powerful body was now skeletal, his skin the color of old parchment. But his eyes, those were still alive with intelligence, with calculation, with the same intensity one recognized in his grandson. Those eyes assessed me now as I sat beside his bed, Jin-ho a silent presence at my side. So, he said in halting English, you are the woman who captured my grandson's heart. I glanced at Jin-ho, unsure how to navigate this fiction. His face gave nothing away. And you? The old man continued, his gaze dropping to my rounded belly. Carry the next generation of our family. The weight of that statement, the expectation, the responsibility, settled on my shoulders. This wasn't just about giving Jin-ho a convenient cover story. This was about a dying man's hope for continuation. Yes, I said, the lie feeling less like a lie with each passing moment. I do. Sun-jae's withered hand reached out, trembling slightly. I hesitated only a moment before placing my palm in his. You are not what I expected, he said, his voice strengthening. But perhaps that is good. New blood, new strength. He switched to Korean, addressing Jin-ho in a tone that required no translation questioning, demanding. Jin-ho responded, his voice steady but with an undercurrent I hadn't heard before. Emotion, conviction. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining with deliberate intent. The old man watched this display with shrewd eyes before nodding once, decisively. He spoke again, this time directly to me. He says you remind him of my grandmother, Jin-ho translated. She was not Korean either. She was Japanese at a time when such matches were forbidden. She fought for her place in this family. I understood then. This wasn't just about bloodlines or legacy. It was about will, about determination, about proving I was strong enough to stand beside a park, regardless of where I came from. I know something about fighting for my place, I said, meeting the old man's gaze directly. And I know something about forbidden matches. Sun-jae smiled then, a fierce expression on that death-haunted face. He spoke again, this time with finality. He says welcome to the family, Jin-ho translated. And that he expects to live long enough to see his great-grandchild born. As we left the room, Jin-ho kept his hand in mine. A performance for the staff we passed, I told myself. Nothing more. But his touch felt less like business and more like anchor with each step we took. You were perfect, he said when we reached the privacy of what would be my suite of rooms. Better than I could have hoped for. I've had practice pretending, I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Pretending I don't notice when people cross the street to avoid me. Pretending I don't hear the whispers when I walk into a room. Pretending the world sees me as a person first, not just a collection of stereotypes. Something shifted in Jin-ho's expression. Not pity. I would have hated that. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. We all wear masks, he said quietly. Some by choice. Some by necessity. Which is yours? I asked, suddenly desperate to know something real about this man who was offering to claim my child as his own. He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he did, his voice was so low I had to lean closer to hear. Both, he said. Always both. Days became weeks. Weeks of learning to navigate the complex dynamics of the Park family. Weeks of working in the state-of-the-art lab Jinho had provided, finally able to continue my research without institutional limitations. Weeks of crafting a shared history, a love story for public consumption, complete with fabricated details about how we met, when we fell in love, why we had kept our relationship private. We need to be convincing, Jinho said as we sat in his study, finalizing the narrative. People will be watching for inconsistencies, especially my cousins. The cousins. I had met them at a family dinner. Sung Min with his cold eyes and colder smile. Jae Young with his deceptive charm and probing questions. Both watching me like hawks, looking for any sign of weakness, any crack in the story. Tell me about them, I said, one hand absently rubbing the spot where the baby was kicking. What exactly are they hoping to find? Jinho's gaze followed the movement of my hand. For a moment, something almost like longing crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual controlled expression. They want what all men want. Power, control, the family businesses. He leaned back in his chair, shadows darkening his features. My grandfather built an empire from nothing. My father expanded it. I've been working to legitimize it completely, to move us away from certain historical activities. The unspoken truth hung between us. Drugs, gambling, worse things probably. The foundations of wealth often had blood in the mortar. And your cousins don't approve of this direction? They think I'm betraying our heritage. His lip curled slightly, as if extortion and violence are cultural treasures to be preserved. They've been waiting for an opportunity to convince my grandfather I'm not committed to the family's future. My single status gave them ammunition. Until I came along, I finished. The perfect solution to your image problem. Something flickered in his eyes, irritation. Perhaps. You make it sound calculated. Wasn't it? Not entirely. He rose from his chair, moving to the window that overlooked the ocean. There were other considerations. I waited for him to elaborate, but he remained silent, his back to me, shoulders rigid beneath his perfectly tailored shirt. You still haven't told me why you chose me, I said finally. The truth this time. He turned, and the expression on his face made my breath catch. Raw, unguarded, almost vulnerable. Because from the moment I saw you at that gala, he said quietly, I haven't been able to forget your face. The room seemed to tilt sideways. What did you just say? The Anderson Gala. You were wearing blue. Your hair was up, except for one curl that kept falling. His eyes never left mine. You were the most beautiful woman in the room, and you were completely unaware of it. Too busy discussing molecular pathways with that Nobel laureate from Sweden. My heart hammered against my ribs. You saw me before. Before whatever happened? I more than saw you. His voice dropped lower. I spoke to you. We talked for nearly an hour about your research. You were brilliant, passionate. I was working up the courage to ask for your number when my security detail pulled me away for an emergency. Memory flashed, fragments, pieces trying to reassemble. A conversation near the bar. Intelligent questions about my work. Dark eyes that actually seemed interested in the answers. That was you? I whispered, the realization settling like a stone in my stomach. But then, later, when I returned, you were gone. I looked for you. His jaw tightened. The next day, I had to fly to Seoul for my father's funeral. By the time I returned to the States, weeks had passed. So you didn't. I couldn't finish the question. No. The denial was immediate, absolute. Never. I would never take advantage of someone in that state. But I did look for you afterward. Discreetly. I wanted to continue our conversation. Relief washed through me, followed immediately by confusion. Then who? I don't know. His hands clenched at his sides. But I intend to find out. I believed him. God help me, I believed him. But that left the most important question unanswered. If you weren't, If we didn't, then who is the father of my baby? Jin-ho's expression softened. Does it matter? Whoever he is, he hasn't been looking for you. Hasn't claimed responsibility. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, sandalwood and something darker, familiar. But I'm here. I'm claiming responsibility. Not out of obligation, but because I want to. Why? The question emerged as barely a whisper. He reached out, his fingers hovering near my cheek without quite touching. Because when I saw your name on that job application, it felt like fate. A second chance to know the woman who hadn't left my thoughts in 6 months. I should have been angry, should have felt manipulated. Instead, a dangerous warmth spread through my chest. This doesn't change our arrangement, I said, trying to sound firm. Of course not. His hand dropped back to his side. The terms remain the same. This is still business. He was lying. I was lying. We both knew it, and neither of us was brave enough to acknowledge the truth. The attack came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the lab, focused on cell cultures, when the door burst open. Jin-ho stood there, his usually impeccable appearance disheveled, a small cut above his eyebrow. We need to leave. Now. His voice was calm, but his eyes were wild. Don't ask questions. Just come with me. I didn't hesitate. Something in his expression told me this wasn't a drill, wasn't a test. This was real danger. He guided me through back corridors I didn't know existed, one hand at the small of my back, the other holding what was unmistakably a gun. My heart pounded in my ears, my breath coming in short gasps. What's happening? I asked as he ushered me into a service elevator. My cousins made their move sooner than expected. His jaw was tight, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. They tried to take my grandfather from the hospital. When that failed, they came for the compound. Oh my God. My hands went protectively to my stomach. Are they trying to kill him? No. They need him alive long enough to change his will. The elevator doors opened to an underground garage. They're trying to kill me. Fear, cold and absolute washed through me. Not for myself, but for him. The realization was startling in its clarity. In just a few weeks, this man had become important to me. More than important. What about your mother? Your staff? Secure. He led me to an unmarked car, checking it thoroughly before opening the passenger door. My people are loyal. As we sped through hidden access roads, Jin-ho made calls in rapid Korean. I caught names, locations, but little else. His voice never betrayed the tension I could see in his white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. Where are we going? I asked when he finally ended the last call. Somewhere safe. He glanced at me, his expression softening fractionally. I'm sorry to involve you in this. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I'm not sorry, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I'd rather know the real danger than live in comfortable ignorance. Something that might have been admiration flickered in his eyes. Most people would be hysterical right now. I laughed. The sound edged with hysteria despite my best efforts. I'm black and visibly pregnant. I live with low-level danger every day of my life. This is just a more concentrated version. Jin-ho didn't laugh. Instead, his expression turned grim. That's a reality I've never had to consider. Welcome to my world, I said without bitterness. It was simply a fact. We drove in silence for a while, the city giving way to coastal highway. Finally, we turned onto a narrow road that wound up into the hills, ending at a modernist structure perched on the cliff edge, almost invisible against the landscape. My personal property, Jin-ho explained as we approached. Off the books, not connected to the family. The interior was minimalist but luxurious. All clean lines and open space, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. No photos, no personal touches. A place to exist, not to live. You'll be safe here, he said, checking security systems at a panel near the door. No one knows about this place except Min-ji. Your sister. He nodded. She'll come check on you tomorrow. I need to go back and deal with this. Panic flared in my chest. Go back? You just said they're trying to kill you. I can't hide while my grandfather is vulnerable. His expression was resolute. This is family business. I need to end it once and for all. I wanted to argue, to demand he stay where it was safe. But I recognized the determination in his eyes, the same look I'd seen in my own mirror when facing down the board that tried to steal my research, the landlord who thought I'd accept his alternative arrangement for rent, the doctors who spoke to my stomach instead of my face. Promise me you'll be careful, I said instead, hating how my voice shook. This baby needs you to come back. It was the first time I'd acknowledged, even obliquely, that our arrangement had become something more. Something real. Jinho's expression changed, softened. He stepped closer, one hand rising to cup my cheek. Only the baby? He asked, his voice low. Couldn't lie. Not now, with danger hovering at the edges of our fragile peace. No, I whispered. Not only the baby. He kissed me then. Not the careful public displays we'd staged for his family, but something real and raw and desperate. I kissed him back with equal fervor, my hands clutching his shirt, pulling him closer despite the rounded barrier of my belly between us. When we finally broke apart, his breathing was as ragged as mine. I'll come back, he promised. Wait for me. After he left, I stood at the window watching until his car disappeared around the bend. The baby kicked, a series of rapid movements as if sensing my distress. It's okay, I whispered, one hand pressed against the spot. Your father is coming back to us. The thought should have felt strange, claiming this connection, this truth. Instead, it felt like finally acknowledging something I'd known for weeks. This charade had become reality. This arrangement had become family. And now that family was in danger. Night fell. Couldn't sleep. Every sound made me tense. Every shadow seemed to move. I tried Jinho's phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. My imagination painted horrific scenarios. Jinho ambushed, outnumbered, bleeding out on marble floors while his cousins watched. When a car's headlights swept across the windows at 2 a.m., my heart nearly stopped. I hid in the bedroom closet, one of Jinho's kitchen knives clutched in my shaking hand, listening to the sound of the front door opening. Zara, a female voice called. It's Minji. Jinho sent me. I emerged cautiously. The woman standing in the living room was unmistakably Jinho's sister. The same elegant bone structure, the same intense eyes. But where his expression was usually guarded, hers was open, concerned. Where is he? I demanded. Is he hurt? He's alive, she said, which wasn't the same as he's fine. There was an incident. He asked me to bring you to him. What kind of incident? My hand went protectively to my belly. Is it safe? Minji's expression softened. It's over. Sungmin and Jaeyoung miscalculated. They thought grandfather would support them when they made their move. They were wrong. A grim satisfaction colored her tone. Very wrong. The drive back to the city was tense. Minji fielding calls in Korean, occasionally glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. He cares for you, she said finally, during a lull in the calls. Really cares. I haven't seen him like this since before our mother died. I didn't know how to respond. This wasn't part of the script we'd rehearsed. I know about the arrangement, she continued, her eyes on the road. Jinho told me everything. Heat flooded my face. Everything. That he met you at the gala. That he couldn't stop thinking about you. That when he found you again, pregnant and vulnerable, he concocted this elaborate scheme to keep you close while he figured out his feelings. She glanced at me, and that somewhere along the way, the pretense became real. My heart hammered against my ribs. He said that, not in so many words. My brother isn't exactly forthcoming about emotions. A small smile curved her lips. But I know him, better than anyone. And I've never seen him look at someone the way he looks at you. We pulled up to a private hospital, not the glamorous medical center where the elder park had been staying, but a discreet facility with heavy security. Minji led me through quiet corridors to a private room where Jinho sat beside his grandfather's bed. He looked up when I entered, and the naked relief on his face made my breath catch. He rose immediately, crossing to me in 3 quick strides, his hands coming up to frame my face. You're safe, he murmured, eyes scanning me as if to verify this fact. Both of you. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Up close, I could see the damage, a deeper cut above his eyebrow now stitched, bruising along his jaw, the careful way he held his right arm. What happened? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What needed to happen? His eyes, usually so controlled, blazed with an emotion I hadn't seen before. They won't threaten what's mine again. The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered me. Instead, it sent warmth spiraling through my chest. I was his. Not as a possession, but as a choice. Your grandfather? I glanced toward the bed where the old man lay sleeping, monitors beeping quietly. Stable. He witnessed everything. Made his position very clear. A ghost of a smile touched Jinho's lips. He called you his lion-hearted granddaughter and ordered me not to lose you. Tears pricked my eyes. I'm not going anywhere. Jinho's gaze intensified. That was our arrangement. Temporary. Convenient. You don't have to. I cut him off by pressing my fingers to his lips. The arrangement changed. You know it did. For a moment he was utterly still. Then his arms wrapped around me, pulling me as close as my belly would allow. I felt him tremble, just slightly, the only outward sign of the emotion he held so rigidly in check. I need to tell you something, he said against my hair. About that night at the gala. I tensed. What about it? He pulled back enough to look into my eyes. I've been investigating. Tracking everyone who was there. Reviewing security footage. His jaw tightened. I know who drugged you, and I know what happened after. Fear and hope warred in my chest. Tell me. It was Vanessa Chin. She slipped something into your drink. The same drink I saw you holding when we spoke. His eyes never left mine. And then, when you began to show signs of disorientation, she directed you to a specific room. A room where Alexander Martinez was waiting. The name hit me like a physical blow. The CEO of Anderson? But he's married. He's a predator. Jinho finished, his voice cold, with a history of similar incidents, all covered up by his company's legal team. Horror and rage washed through me in equal measure. He's the father? Jinho's expression changed hesitation, uncertainty. That's the part I'm not sure about. The security footage shows you entering that room. But 15 minutes later, I'm seen entering the same corridor, looking for you. And Martinez is seen leaving alone shortly after. Memory stirred, fragments trying to assemble into a whole. A door opening. A man's voice. Not what he expected. Then another voice, angry, threatening. Being led away, supported by strong arms. Safe. You interrupted him, I whispered, the realization dawning. You stopped him. Jinho nodded, his expression grave. I saw you earlier. Remembered our conversation. I was looking for you, hoping to continue it before I had to leave for Seoul. When I found that room, you were... He stopped, jaw clenching.